The government is quietly moving emergency supplies out of regional hubs at a pace nobody has seen in 20 years, and most people have no idea it is even happening. 3 days ago, a contact reached out to me directly. This person works inside a large-scale emergency logistics facility, not a small local warehouse, the kind of facility that holds backup inventory for an entire state. What they described to me was not panic buying. It was not empty shelves or disorganized crowds. It was systematic, deliberate, pallets being moved out by contractors at a steady, controlled pace. No public announcement, no press release, no explanation given to the workers watching it happen. Just movement. Quiet, organized, intentional movement. And at the very end of that phone call, this person gave me one piece of advice: move now. I hung up the phone, sat with that for about 30 seconds, grabbed my keys, and drove straight to the store. I do supply audits a few times every year. Check expiration dates, restock what has been used, fill the gaps, move on. Usually routine, usually calm. This one was different from the moment I pulled into the parking lot. This one had real urgency behind it, because based on what my contacts are seeing inside the system, what supply chain data is quietly signaling to people paying attention, and what I personally witnessed on store shelves during this trip, a specific window is closing. Around the 1st of April, certain categories of supplies either disappear from shelves entirely or jump in price so hard and so fast that stocking up becomes impractical for most households. So this video covers everything I bought, exactly why I bought it, and how to prioritize the list if your budget is limited. Everything is ordered by urgency. Most critical items first. Let us get into it, starting with the single most important thing you need to handle before you even finish watching this video. The first category is cash and financial liquidity, and I want to be very clear about the timing here. I want you to do this today, not after the video is over, not tomorrow morning when it is more convenient. Today, before you do anything else on this list. Go to your bank or your ATM and pull out physical cash. Here's what most people forget or never learned in the first place until it's already too late to act on it. When there is even a credible rumor of grid disruption or major infrastructure failure, banks do not sit and wait for the lights to actually go out before they respond. They begin restricting withdrawals immediately, proactively, to prevent a bank run from accelerating the problem. We watched that exact sequence play out during the 2008 financial collapse. We watched a version of it during COVID lockdowns. We are going to watch it happen again. And if you believe your debit card functions at a register without power running through the system, it does not. If you think mobile payment apps or digital wallets step in and save the day, they do not. Cash is the only thing that works universally and unconditionally when the broader system stops working. I want you to really sit with what that means on a practical level. Every single dollar you have sitting in a digital bank account is completely unreachable the moment connectivity breaks down or the grid goes dark. It doesn't disappear permanently, but it might as well not exist because you cannot spend it, access it, move it, or use it to protect your family in the moments when protecting your family matters the most. A neighbor of mine learned this lesson the hard way during a severe winter storm a few years back. Power was completely out for 4 full days across a wide area. He had several $1,000s sitting in his checking account. Couldn't access a single cent of it. His young child needed formula. I walked over and handed him cash from my wallet, bills I had set aside months earlier, specifically because I understood this exact scenario was possible. That conversation permanently changed how he thinks about money and preparedness. So pull your cash today. And here's the part that most people always skip even when they do remember to pull cash. Small bills only. 1s, 5s, 10s, and 20s. A $100 bill when nobody around you has change to break it is effectively worthless. It's paper with a number printed on it that does absolutely nothing for you when the person selling you what you need cannot make change. Do this step first. Everything else on this list comes after. Now, let's talk about what happens the moment your communication with the outside world goes completely dark, because that is not a hypothetical designed to scare you. That is the second critical category on this list, and it is far more important than most people give it credit until they're living through it. After I got off the phone with my contact, the next thing I did was walk through my house and physically check every power bank, every solar charger, every portable battery station I own. What I found was genuinely not reassuring. My primary 300-watt power station was sitting at 41% charge. My backup hand-crank emergency radio, the one I have mentioned in multiple videos as essential, had corroded batteries, completely dead, not low, dead. Now think about what that means if the grid had gone down that same night. No functional lighting, no way to reach family members who are not home with me, no way to know whether the outage was going to last 2 hours or 2 weeks, no way to monitor what was developing in the world outside my walls, complete isolation inside your own home. Someone in my broader community went through the extended Puerto Rico blackout after the hurricane. He described it to me in detail. He said the storm itself was terrifying but survivable. The worst part was not the storm. The worst part came on day 3, when his phone battery finally died and every source of information went silent simultaneously. He did not know whether emergency help was coming or had been diverted. He did not know if his mother, who lived on the other side of the city, was safe or injured or worse. Just silence in every direction. Complete informational blackout on top of a physical one. That story has stayed with me and shaped how seriously I take the communications category. In any sustained crisis, information is oxygen. The moment you lose access to it, every single decision becomes harder, every risk multiplies, and your ability to protect the people around you shrinks dramatically. So here is your action item from this section. Charge everything today. Every power bank, every headlamp, every two-way radio, every hand-crank device in your home. Do it right now, today, while the power is running and the option is available to you. Now I need your full attention for this next section, because what I'm about to lay out is the pattern that tells me this particular moment is genuinely different from routine preparedness cycles. I've been doing this long enough to develop a feel for when something real is building versus when the noise is just noise, and the signals I am seeing right now across multiple product categories look almost identical to what I was observing in early 2020 in the weeks immediately before shelves across the country went empty for the first time in a generation. Prices rising across staple categories, pack sizes quietly shrinking while prices hold or increase, and certain product lines entering what the supply chain industry refers to as allocation. That word sounds technical and administrative and calm. What it actually means at a practical level is that retailers cannot receive enough supply to satisfy existing demand, so distributors are rationing product across their retail accounts, and the retailers are managing what little they receive as carefully as they can. Here is what allocation looks like from where you are standing as a consumer. You walk into your regular store on a regular Tuesday. The shelf is not completely stripped bare, but the specific brand you have bought for years is not there. The package size you always purchase is not on the shelf. What remains is the premium-priced version, the unfamiliar off-brand label, the smaller package being sold at the same price the larger one used to cost. That is allocation. That is the early visible symptom of a supply squeeze, and it shows up at the consumer level well before the dramatic empty shelf images that make the news, and we are already there in several categories right now. I've spent the past 60 days actively talking to store managers, tracking price changes across multiple retailers, and having private conversations with people working inside distribution networks. What they are describing privately is significantly and consistently different from what is being reported publicly. When I did my full store run this week, buying the same items I always buy, nothing exotic, nothing unusual, I spent noticeably more money than I normally spend on that same list of goods. Buying in bulk right now is not just a preparedness strategy, it's a straightforward financial strategy. The food sitting in your pantry at today's price is a real asset. Tomorrow that same food costs more. Buying it now is buying it at a discount relative to where prices are heading. So let's get specific about exactly what to prioritize. Grains come first, without question. Rice, flour, oats, and pasta. These 4 items form the caloric foundation of any serious food storage plan. They are versatile, they're shelf-stable over long periods when stored correctly, and they stretch further per dollar than almost anything else you can put in your pantry.
If I could walk out of a store with only a single item in a genuine grid-down scenario, it would be rice every single time. Calorie-dense, inexpensive relative to its caloric value, compatible with almost any other ingredient you have available, and capable of being prepared with minimal resources. I grabbed a 25-pound bag this week and genuinely should have picked up 2. I also purchased unbleached all-purpose flour, not a specialty variety, not an organic brand, because when supply is visibly tightening, you take what is available and you are grateful it is there. A lot of people learn that lesson for the first time in the middle of an actual shortage, which is exactly the wrong moment to be learning it. Fats and oils come next on the priority list, and this is the category that people consistently and significantly understock every single time, without exception. Coconut oil, olive oil, vegetable oil, purchase what you can find and what fits your budget. Peanut butter belongs in this category as well, and it deserves special emphasis. It is calorie-dense, it requires absolutely 0 cooking or preparation, it has a reasonable shelf life, and it works equally well for adults and children. If I had to identify one single food product that checks every meaningful box in a sustained emergency, peanut butter is the answer without serious competition. After fats, move to canned proteins. Tuna, canned chicken, canned salmon, and beans across multiple varieties. Beans deserve particular attention because they deliver both protein and carbohydrates in a single affordable can, which makes them extraordinarily efficient from a storage and nutrition standpoint. Purchase variety across types: baked beans, black beans, chickpeas, kidney beans, lentils. This matters more than people expect, because eating the exact same meal every single day breaks people down mentally and emotionally far faster than most individuals anticipate going in. Morale is a real, measurable variable in any extended emergency scenario. Food fatigue is a genuine problem with real consequences for decision-making and group cohesion. Plan for variety from the beginning. Honey belongs on this list and deserves its own specific mention. 3 large jars at absolute minimum. Honey is one of the only food products that does not expire under proper storage conditions. It functions as a sweetener, as a natural preservative, and it carries genuine antimicrobial properties that make it medically useful beyond its role as a food item. It is non-negotiable on any serious preparedness shopping list. And here is something I noticed during this particular trip that genuinely frustrated me and that you need to know about before your next store run. I grabbed a case of canned goods I have purchased many times before. Same brand, same shelf placement, same price point, same external packaging dimensions. I assumed 12 cans based on every previous purchase of this exact product. There were 8 cans inside. Same case, same price. 8 cans where 12 used to be. Shrinkflation is accelerating faster than most consumers are actively tracking, and it hits hardest in exactly the staple categories that matter most for food storage. Count every single unit before you commit to a purchase. Every time, without exception. Do not assume continuity from past purchases. Now we need to spend some real time on the category that almost nobody thinks about proactively, and then almost everybody desperately wishes they had addressed once a disruption actually begins: sanitation. This is the gap that consistently transforms a manageable, inconvenient disruption into a genuine public health crisis. People stock food, people stock water, and then people almost universally ignore what comes after the consumption of food and water, which is waste management and hygiene maintenance. Here is the sequence that plays out when sanitation fails in a real grid-down event. Within 48 to 72 hours of sustained grid failure, municipal water treatment facilities begin losing the ability to maintain clean, pressurized water delivery to homes and buildings. Sewage and waste management systems begin backing up as pumping infrastructure fails.
Human waste accumulates in and around populated areas, and disease begins spreading through communities at a pace that people living in modern, developed countries have genuinely never experienced firsthand and are completely unprepared for psychologically. This is not a historical footnote from the distant past. Cholera, typhoid, dysentery, these are not ancient diseases confined to history books. They are diseases of the 21st century that reemerge with speed and severity whenever basic sanitation infrastructure collapses. The historical record is absolutely consistent on this point.
More casualties in major disasters across history have been caused by disease following the breakdown of sanitation than by the initial disaster event itself. The difference between a community that holds together through a prolonged disruption and one that fractures and suffers severe loss is often determined more by sanitation discipline than by any other single factor. So what do you actually need in this category to be genuinely prepared? A portable toilet system with adequate waste bags specifically designed for this purpose, hygiene supplies in meaningful quantity, hand sanitizer stocked well beyond what you think you will need, nitrile gloves in multiple boxes, unscented bleach for water treatment and surface sanitation, and perhaps most importantly, a clear sanitation protocol that every single person in your household understands, has discussed, and will actually follow when conditions become difficult. The sanitation category is not glamorous. It does not generate excitement the way food storage or gear does, but it may ultimately be the most consequential category on this entire list. Fuel is next, and the window for acting on this one is closing faster than most other categories. The average household in this country has enough fuel on hand to sustain roughly 1 day of actual disruption level usage, running a generator, making multiple vehicle trips, operating camp stoves and heating equipment simultaneously. 1 day. Generators need fuel, vehicles need fuel, camp stoves need fuel. And fuel is consistently one of the first resources to either vanish from retail locations or become subject to formal rationing during any sustained grid event of meaningful duration. I filled every approved fuel storage container I own this week, every single one, to capacity, and I added fuel stabilizer to everything beyond the 10-day storage mark because untreated stored fuel degrades over months in ways that can damage engines and fuel systems at exactly the moment you need that equipment to function reliably. There is a specific phenomenon worth understanding in detail here because it follows an almost identical pattern every single time it occurs. It is called a fuel run, and once you understand the sequence, you will never want to be on the wrong side of it. First comes a credible signal of potential disruption, not even confirmed disruption, just the serious possibility of one being reported or circulating. Within a matter of hours, lines begin forming at gas stations across the affected region. People who had been meaning to fill up get in line alongside people who were genuinely alarmed. Within 12 to 24 hours, the majority of stations in the area are completely dry. The stations that still have fuel remaining implement immediate restrictions. Cash only, 10 gallons per vehicle maximum, first come, first served with no exceptions. And the people standing in those lines, waiting for hours in some cases, are not bad people. They are not careless people. They are simply people who genuinely believed they had more time than they did. That is the only difference between them and the people who are not in line. Fill your containers now. Act while the option is straightforward and unhurried. Here is a question worth asking yourself directly and answering honestly. Is your home actually secure right now in a scenario where the power grid is down for an extended period? Because the honest answer for most households is no, and most people do not realize it until they think it through carefully. The majority of conventional home security systems in use today are designed and optimized to function within a normal, grid-powered environment with active cellular network connectivity. When the grid fails, most of those systems fail alongside it. The monitoring company loses its connection, the cellular communicator goes dark, the automated alerts stop functioning, and the physical security of your home, during exactly the kind of scenario where your family is most exposed and most vulnerable, depends entirely on barriers and measures that do not require power to work. What actually functions in a grid-down security environment is physical layering,
Multiple independent barriers operating without any dependence on power or connectivity. I walked my entire property perimeter this week with real attention in intention. Every exterior door, every accessible window, every potential entry point that someone determined and patient might consider. I tested every battery backup on every sensor and device, and I added standalone contact alarms at key entry points, the type that activated 120 decibels the instant the circuit breaks. Battery-powered, completely grid-independent, fully functional in total darkness when every other electronic system in the house has gone dark. If you have firearms in your home for defensive purposes, use this as your prompt to clean them, function check them thoroughly, and ensure your ammunition supply is adequate. Stock what you need now before availability tightens again. We have watched that cycle compress rapidly twice in recent years. The people who wait for a clear signal before acting are consistently the people who find empty shelves when they arrive. Medical preparedness is the category that concerns me most deeply and the one I want you to take most seriously. More than 90% of the active pharmaceutical ingredients in the generic medications sold across the United States are manufactured overseas, with the majority coming from facilities in China and India. That is not a political opinion or a fringe claim. That is a documented, publicly available supply chain reality that appears in FDA records and has been acknowledged repeatedly by health policy researchers and government officials. When a significant disruption occurs, a serious trade conflict, a major shipping lane interruption, an extended grid failure, any meaningful shock to the supply chain, the pipeline for medications in this country can dry up with a speed that shocks people who encounter it for the first time. And the medications that disappear first, consistently, are antibiotics. Let me describe what that looks like not in policy language, but in the specific, personal, kitchen table terms that actually communicate the stakes. Your child develops a severe ear infection. You drive to your regular pharmacy. The antibiotic that was prescribed is out of stock at that location. You call ahead to the next nearest pharmacy. Out of stock there as well. You contact the hospital to ask about alternatives. They explain they are currently rationing what little supply they have for critical inpatient cases and cannot help with outpatient requests. Your child is at home, in real pain, with a fever that is climbing by the hour, while every option you try comes back empty. That is not a scenario I constructed for rhetorical effect. That is the sequence of events that plays out in real households when the antibiotic supply chain breaks down. Early, limited versions of this happened during COVID-era supply disruptions and during the shortages that developed in 2022. Those incidents were minor disturbances compared to what a full grid failure or significant trade collapse would produce across the country simultaneously. There are physician-supervised medical kit options available that provide a core set of prescription antibiotics covering the most common and most dangerous infection categories: respiratory infections, urinary tract infections, wound and skin infections, gastrointestinal illness. It is a one-time investment that permanently builds a capability your household currently lacks. Beyond the prescription component, go through every first aid kit in your home today. Not next week, not when you get around to it. Today. Check the expiration date on every single item. Replace every expired tourniquet, every depleted hemostatic gauze pack, every outdated burn dressing, every wound closure strip that is degraded. In an extended grid-down scenario, a wound that would be routine under normal medical access becomes a serious infection within days. A serious infection becomes sepsis. A minor dental problem becomes a spreading abscess. These outcomes are not inevitable consequences of the scenario. They are specifically and exclusively the outcomes experienced by people who had not prepared their medical supplies before the moment of need arrived. The final operational category is your go bag and your get home bag, and I'm going to be completely honest with you about my own experience this week because I think transparency here matters more than a polished presentation. I physically went through both of my bags, not in my head, not a quick glance and a mental confirmation that everything was probably fine. I unzipped them, turned them completely upside down, dumped every item onto the floor, and went through each one by hand. What I found was humbling in a way that I am sharing with you because I guarantee some version of it is happening in your bags right now too. Items I had pulled out for a video shoot 2 weeks prior had not been fully replaced. My partner found a granola bar inside with an expiration date 14 months in the past. A bag that has not been physically and completely verified is not a go bag. It is a bag that has some stuff in it and gives you a false sense of security that you have not actually earned. And in a real emergency, false confidence is measurably more dangerous than having no bag at all. The reason that matters is specific and worth understanding clearly. False confidence eliminates improvisation. It eliminates the adaptive thinking that keeps people alive when circumstances deviate from expectations.
When you reach into that bag expecting a specific item and find it missing, you lose time that the situation does not have available to give back to you. Time that in certain scenarios is the difference between outcomes you cannot afford to think about. I have had detailed conversations with multiple people who evacuated during major wildfires on the West Coast over the past several years. The consistent, repeated finding across those conversations was not that they lacked a bag entirely. The vast majority of them had bags. The problem was that the bags had not been verified recently. Dead batteries in the primary flashlight, water purification tablets expired by over a year, first aid kits with specific items missing, the exact items needed for the specific situation they were in. One person described driving through dense smoke for 2 solid hours, reaching the designated family rally point, opening his bag and discovering that his water filter was not inside. He had taken it out for a camping trip the previous summer, 6 months before the evacuation, and had never put it back. One camping trip, one missing filter, in the middle of a wildfire evacuation with no access to clean water at the destination. Here is your verification checklist, and I want you to do this physically tonight, not at some point in the coming weeks. Bug out bag. Open it completely, remove every item, verify condition and expiration, repack deliberately. Get home bag. Same process, no exceptions. Every first aid kit in your home. Open it and go through it item by item with your hands. Food stored in bags. Check every expiration date and replace anything past its date. All battery-powered devices. Charge or replace batteries right now. Water purification supplies. Verify expiration dates because those tablets have a real shelf life that matters in ways you will only discover when you need them and they do not work. Emergency documents. Are current copies inside each bag? Physical cash. Is there actual paper currency in every bag you might grab in a hurry? Every item, every bag, every kit verified by hand. And if you have not yet built any of these bags, the 1st of April is your concrete target date. Not because a specific event is scheduled to occur on that date, but because that is the point where converging data suggests the window for easy, affordable, unhurried preparation closes meaningfully. Before that date, the option is open and relatively straightforward. After it, the data suggests conditions become significantly more difficult. That is your target. That is your line. Before we close out, I want to put everything in the broader context that I think makes all of these individual actions make sense as a unified strategy rather than a disconnected checklist. What we are dealing with right now is not a single isolated threat with a clear beginning, middle, and end. It is a genuine convergence of multiple pressure points moving simultaneously in the same direction. Supply chains carrying real and documented stress, consumer prices rising across essential categories, certain product lines already in allocation at the distributor level, government logistics moving in patterns that people inside those systems describe as unprecedented in their professional experience, and the historical pattern recognition that comes from studying how disruptions have unfolded across multiple decades, pointing in a consistent direction. None of that is a reason for panic. Panic is a reactive state that produces poor decisions quickly, but all of it together is a clear and compelling reason for urgency. Urgency is a proactive state that produces good decisions before the window to make them closes. Those two things, panic and urgency, feel similar from the outside but produce completely opposite outcomes. Choose urgency. Act from that place. The people who navigate major disruptions with their families intact are not the people who happen to own the most gear or maintain the largest food stores or run the most expensive equipment. The research on this is actually quite consistent. The people who come through difficult periods most intact are the ones who took specific, consistent, practical action before the majority of the population understood that action was necessary. They did not wait for certainty before moving, because in these situations, certainty always arrives after the window has already closed. By the time the mainstream news confirms what the people watching supply chain data already knew, the shelves are already thinning. By the time a price spike makes the front page, the spike has already fully materialized. Being ahead of the curve is not a luxury for the especially cautious. It is the entire strategy. It is the only strategy that works consistently. Let me give you the complete list one final time. Write it down on paper. Take a screenshot.
Send it to someone in your life who needs to hear this and who you know will actually act on it. Cash and financial liquidity secured in small bills kept accessible at home. Power banks, communications devices, and backup radios fully charged and functional. Food storage built deliberately around grains, healthy fats, shelf-stable proteins, and meaningful variety. Sanitation supplies and household hygiene protocols in place and understood by every person in your home. Fuel containers filled, stabilizer added, stored safely and accessibly. Home security hardened with physical, grid-independent layers at every entry point. Medical supplies, including prescription antibiotics where accessible, and a fully restocked and verified first aid kit. Bags physically dumped out, every item verified by hand, every expiration date confirmed, every critical item replaced. 8 categories. 8 distinct areas where the investment made before a disruption is a fraction, often a small fraction, of the cost of trying to address the gap after a disruption has already begun.